Picture this: you're standing in a grand medieval hall, the air thick with the scent of candle wax and aged parchment. Sunlight filters through stained glass, casting colorful patterns across walls covered in elaborate paintings. At first glance, they seem like ordinary decorations, scenes of bustling markets, ships laden with goods, merchants shaking hands. But look closer, and you'll realize these aren't just works of art. They're a secret language, a carefully crafted code used by merchant guilds to smuggle goods right under the noses of kings and tax collectors. For centuries, historians assumed these wall paintings were mere symbols of wealth or religious devotion. But hidden in their brushstrokes were detailed instructions, routes, prices, even the identities of corrupt officials willing to turn a blind eye. This was a world where art wasn't just for admiration. It was a tool of survival, a way to outwit authorities and keep lucrative trade networks alive. The guilds didn't just paint their walls. They turned them into maps, ledgers, and encrypted messages, all disguised as harmless decoration. So how did this system work? Who were the artists behind these cunning designs? And why did entire economies depend on decoding what appeared to be simple murals? Over the next few minutes, we'll peel back the layers of history to reveal how these paintings functioned as the medieval equivalent of a spy's cipher. You'll discover the clever techniques used to hide messages in plain sight, from hidden symbols to carefully placed colors that only insiders could interpret. By the time we're done, you'll never look at medieval art the same way again. This isn't just a story about smuggling, it's about human ingenuity, the lengths people will go to protect their livelihoods, and the surprising ways creativity can bend the rules. So let's step inside those guild halls together and uncover the secrets painted on the walls. To understand why merchant guilds turned wall paintings into smuggling codes, we need to step back into the bustling trade hubs of medieval Europe. Imagine a world where local rulers and foreign powers imposed heavy taxes on everything from spices to silk, where transporting goods safely meant navigating a maze of checkpoints and greedy officials. Merchant guilds weren't just business networks, they were lifelines, tightly knit communities that protected their members from financial ruin, and protection often required secrecy. These guilds operated like early corporations, but with a twist. Their power extended beyond commerce. They funded cathedrals, influenced politics, and even had their own courts to settle disputes. Yet beneath this respectable facade, many guilds thrived by bending the rules. Smuggling wasn't just about profit, it was survival. A single confiscated shipment could bankrupt a family, so guilds developed elaborate ways to share information without leaving a paper trail. That's where the paintings came in. Take the Hanseitic League, a network of guilds that dominated Northern Europe's trade. Their halls were adorned with murals depicting seemingly innocent scenes: ships at sea, merchants weighing goods, farmers harvesting crops. But to a trained eye, those images held hidden details. The number of barrels on a ship might correspond to a tax rate, while the position of a merchant's hand could signal which port officials were bribable. Even the colors had meaning. A specific shade of blue in a sky might indicate a safe route, while red trim on a garment could warn of increased patrols. This system worked because few outside the guild suspected art could be a cipher. Authorities saw decoration, insiders saw a roadmap, and because paintings were permanent, they couldn't be easily destroyed like a smuggled letter. The genius lay in their ambiguity. A guild member could deny any hidden meaning, claiming it was just a pretty scene. It was the perfect blend of artistry and deception, proving that in the medieval world, the most powerful messages weren't written in ink, they were painted on walls. The real magic of these smuggling paintings wasn't just in their hidden messages, it was in how seamlessly they blended into everyday life. Medieval artists mastered the art of double meanings, turning public artworks into private guides. Take something as simple as a fruit basket in a market scene. To an outsider, it's just a detail adding vibrancy to the painting. But to a guild member, the type of fruit, its arrangement, even the number of leaves on a stem could reveal critical information. A cluster of grapes might hint at a shipment of wine avoiding tariffs, while an overripe fig could warn of spoiled deals or informants. Colors were especially powerful tools. In an era before chemical dyes, pigments were expensive and carefully chosen. A deep crimson wasn't just decorative, it might mark a high-risk route where guards demanded bribes. Meanwhile, the soft green of a meadow could signal a safe path through woodland checkpoints. Even the absence of color spoke volumes. A deliberately faded patch in a tapestry might indicate a compromised trading partner, a silent warning to avoid them. Figures in these paintings were never placed at random. A merchant leaning slightly to the left in a crowd could point toward a hidden alleyway used for covert exchanges. A saint's halo tilted at an odd angle that might mirror the position of a secret warehouse door. Some guilds took this further, encoding entire maps into seemingly religious scenes. The folds of a saint's robe could trace the bends of a river, while the placement of angels overhead marked safe harbors along the coast. Perhaps most ingenious was how these paintings evolved. As authorities grew suspicious, guild artists adapted, layering meanings so only the most trusted members could decode them fully. A mural might appear harmless to a junior merchant but reveal deeper secrets to a guild master, like a medieval version of clearance levels. This constant innovation kept the system alive for centuries, proving that in the cat-and-mouse game of medieval trade, creativity was the ultimate weapon. The paintings weren't just hiding messages, they were living puzzles, changing with the times to stay one step ahead of the law. Among the most fascinating aspects of these smuggling paintings were the symbols guild artists used ordinary objects that carried extraordinary meanings. A lion carved above a doorway might seem like a simple emblem of strength, but to a merchant it signaled a shipment requiring extra protection. Broken chains woven into a border design. That wasn't just decoration, it whispered of newly opened routes where bribes had loosened official scrutiny. Even everyday items like keys or combs held double meanings, their positions and orientations acting as silent instructions for those in the know. Flowers were especially clever code carriers. At first glance, a vase of roses in a banquet scene added elegance, but insiders recognized them as markers for high-value spice shipments. Lilies tucked into a saint's hand, a nod to silks arriving from the east. The more delicate the bloom, the more perishable or discreet the goods. Historians have uncovered patterns where wilting petals warned of delayed caravans, while fresh blossoms confirmed safe passage. This floral cipher was so effective because it played on medieval society's love of symbolism. Religious art was already packed with hidden meanings, so why wouldn't merchants borrow the same trick? Animals, too, were part of this visual lexicon. A fox near the edge of a mural didn't just represent cunning, it flagged a trader known for slipping through customs undetected. Doves might indicate peaceful trade agreements, while hawks could warn of rival guilds poaching routes. Even mythical creatures had roles. A dragon painted near a city's gates wasn't fantasy, it was code for a port with notoriously aggressive tax collectors. The beauty of this system lay in its adaptability. Symbols shifted meaning across regions or years to stay ahead of prying eyes. A ship's sail angled just so might mean one thing in Bruges and another in Venice. ensuring only local guild members could decode the latest intelligence. And because these motifs were baked into larger narratives, biblical scenes, harvest festivals, they left no suspicious gaps for outsiders to question. The paintings didn't just hide messages, they wrapped them in stories so compelling that no one thought to look deeper. For medieval merchants, art wasn't just a language, it was a lifeline where every brushstroke could mean the difference between profit and ruin. Religion gave medieval smuggling codes their perfect disguise. In an era where faith permeated every aspect of life, from market squares to royal courts, guild artists realized sacred imagery was the ultimate cover. No one would dare question a painting of the Virgin Mary or a stained glass window showing the Last Supper, which made them ideal canvases for hidden trade secrets. Take Saint Christopher, the towering figure often depicted carrying Christ across a river. To the devout, it was a reminder of divine protection. But to a guild member, that same image might signal a river crossing where guards could be bribed, or where goods could be smuggled under cover of darkness. The saint's staff, seemingly just a biblical detail, might angle toward a hidden inlet used for unloading untaxed silks. Even heaven and hell became part of the code. A fresco showing sinners cast into flames that could warn of a port where inspections were brutally strict. Meanwhile, angels ascending on golden clouds might mark a trade route with particularly lenient officials, a heavenly loophole in earthly laws. Guilds commissioned these works for chapels and guild halls, ensuring their messages hid in the most sacred spaces. After all, who would accuse a merchant of smuggling when he'd just funded a new altar painting of the Annunciation? The genius lay in layers of meaning. A scene of the Magi presenting gifts to the infant Jesus seemed pious, but the number of gifts, their arrangement, even the colors of the robes, each element could hold practical intelligence. 3 gold coins might represent a bribe amount, while Mur's placement hinted at a shipment's arrival date. Some scholars believe the famed Ghent altarpiece, with its intricate panels of saints and donors, contained such codes. The very complexity that made it a masterpiece also made it the perfect cipher. This blending of devotion and deception speaks to medieval society's contradictions. Guilds were pillars of their communities, funding hospitals and orphanages, yet their survival often depended on bending the rules. By weaving smuggling routes into saintly visions, they turned piety into pragmatism. The paintings endured for centuries, their secrets fading even as the art remained. Today, we admire their beauty, unaware that some brushstrokes once guided shadowy deals beneath the watchful eyes of saints. In the heart of Lübeck's ancient guild halls, the walls tell stories within stories. At first glance, the murals seem like typical celebrations of maritime life, ships cresting waves, merchants haggling over barrels, fishermen hauling nets. But beneath the surface, every brushstroke served a purpose. These weren't just tributes to trade, they were blueprints for bypassing it. Take the famous mural in the Schiffergesellschaft, the Seafarers' Guild Hall. A bustling harbor scene stretches across the walls, filled with ships of every size. To the untrained eye, it's a snapshot of daily life. But historians noticed peculiar details. The way certain vessels were positioned at odd angles, or how specific flags fluttered against the wind. These weren't artistic choices, they were coordinates. One ship, painted slightly apart from the others with its sails unfurled in an unusual pattern, marked a little-known channel near Gotland where amber smugglers could avoid customs patrols. The number of fish in a nearby net that corresponded to the bribe required to dock at Riga without inspection. Even the colors held clues. The deep russet of a merchant's cloak matched the shade of dye used on furs smuggled from Novgorod, a silent advertisement to insiders. The mural's central figure, a stern-faced captain pointing toward the horizon, wasn't just decorative. His outstretched arm, aligned perfectly with a hidden compass, rose in the floor tiles, directing initiates to a safe house in Tallinn. What made Lübeck's murals so effective was their adaptability. Over decades, guild artists subtly updated them, a mast added here, a sail trimmed there to reflect changing trade conditions. When Danish authorities cracked down on amber smuggling in the 1500s, painters altered the scenes overnight. A once prominent ship vanished beneath layers of new pigment, while a freshly added storm cloud warned of heightened surveillance. Authorities never suspected the art they admired was being rewritten like a smuggler's ledger. Modern technology has peeled back these layers, revealing the mural's secrets. Infrared imaging shows discarded routes painted over like erased entries in a logbook, while spectral analysis uncovers pigments from distant lands, evidence of the very goods these paintings helped traffic. Today, the murals still hang in Lübeck's guild halls, their beauty intact but their codes mostly silent. They stand as a testament to an era when art wasn't just observed, it was obeyed, where a single glance at the right detail could mean the difference between wealth and ruin. For the Hanseitic merchants, these walls weren't just decoration. They were the original blockchain, a decentralized, encrypted ledger, written not in numbers but in waves and sails. Breaking down one of these smuggling paintings is like peeling an onion. Each layer reveals something new, carefully designed to be visible only to those who knew where to look. Take a typical guild hall mural from 15th century Antwerp. At first glance, it shows a lively marketplace, vendors selling cloth, children playing near a fountain, a nobleman on horseback. Nothing seems out of place, but shift your focus to the background, and the real story emerges. That distant church spire isn't just part of the skyline. Its precise angle matches the location of a wharf where untaxed wool was unloaded after dark. The fountain's flowing water, the number of carved ripples corresponds to the going rate for bribing dock inspectors. Even the nobleman's horse has a purpose. Its raised hoof points toward a tavern where deals were struck behind closed doors. The borders of these paintings were anything but decorative. Interlocking vines might seem like mere embellishment, but their twists and knots followed a precise pattern, a cipher indicating which merchants had paid their guild dues or which routes were compromised. In one Venetian example, the gilded frame's floral motifs concealed tiny ship rudders, each turned to a specific degree. To an outsider, it was abstract artistry. To a guild member, it was a nautical chart. The rudder angles corresponded to safe sailing directions around patrol ships in the Adriatic. Colors played a starring role too. A vibrant red cloak in the foreground might draw the eye, but the duller hues in the background held the real secrets, that muted brown barn in the distance. Its shading varied slightly to indicate whether grain shipments were being diverted. The technique was deliberate. Bright colors distracted observers, while the subtler tones carried actionable intelligence. Some artists even used egg tempera in ways that changed under candlelight. A saint's halo might glow uniformly by day, but flickering flames at night would reveal hidden numbers along its edge, dates, prices, or weights. Perhaps most ingenious was how these layers interacted. A fruit seller's stall might show apples arranged in a pyramid, a harmless still life, until you noticed the pyramid's base had exactly 12 apples. That number, combined with a 12-petaled flower in the border and 12 tiles on the painted floor, formed a triad pointing to the 12th warehouse in the harbor district, where contraband was stored. This multi-symbol system ensured that even if one clue was spotted, the full message remained secure. Only those who knew all the layers could piece together the puzzle. Modern art historians use spectral imaging to uncover these buried narratives, revealing how painters scraped away pigments to edit routes as conditions changed. Beneath the surface of these masterpieces lies a shadow history of medieval trade, not in ledgers, but in brushstrokes. The paintings were more than art. They were collaborative projects, with artists and merchants working side by side to turn pigment into profit. Every detail, from a stray thread on a merchant's sleeve to the flight path of a painted bird, was a thread in a larger tapestry of deception, one that fooled kings, tax collectors, and even time itself. Goldsmiths didn't just work with precious metals, they painted with them. Their guild halls shimmered with artworks that doubled as treasure maps, where every gleam of gold leaf and silver pigment held a covert meaning. A saint's gilded halo in an altarpiece might seem like a symbol of divinity, but to a guild insider, its exact placement, say, tilted slightly toward the edge of the frame, could point to a hidden vault beneath the workshop floor. Even the thickness of the gold leaf mattered. A subtly layered section might indicate the purity of smuggled bullion, while a worn patch hinted at a route now too dangerous to use. Light played a starring role in these metallic codes. Goldsmiths mastered the art of reflective surfaces, arranging them so sunlight at certain hours would reveal hidden details. A polished silver chalice in a painting might catch the morning light to cast a tiny, deliberate glare, a beacon directing initiates to a specific bench in the guild hall where deals were made. At night, candlelight could transform these scenes entirely. A mural that appeared ordinary by day might, when flickering flames hit it just right, unveil a constellation of tiny gold dots along a riverbank, marking spots where untaxed silver ingots were buried. The guilds took this further by embedding real metals into their art. A portrait of a patron saint might feature a thin strand of actual gold woven into the paint, visible only up close. To outsiders, it was a sign of devotion. To members, it was a ledger. The length of the strand corresponded to the weight of a recent shipment, while its curvature hinted at the route taken. Some paintings even used metallic oxides that tarnished predictably over time, creating a built-in expiration date for the information they carried. A once bright copper sky fading to green might signal that a smuggling route was no longer safe. Religious imagery provided perfect cover. Goldsmiths frequently donated lavish artworks to churches, earning goodwill while embedding trade secrets in plain sight. A donated triptych might show the adoration of the Magi, fitting given their gifts of gold, but the number of folds in the Magi's robes could denote interest rates on loans, while the positioning of their hands revealed which mints were producing underweight coins. These layered meanings turned piety into pragmatism. After all, what king would accuse a generous guild of smuggling when their donation gleamed with apparent holiness? The real brilliance lay in the system's deniability. If questioned, goldsmiths could claim any metallic flourish was purely aesthetic, a celebration of their craft. The painting's beauty disarmed suspicion, while their technical complexity made decoding impossible without guild training. Today, conservators using X-ray fluorescence uncover ghostly traces of these hidden systems, layers of paint mixed with precious powders, brushstrokes that align with long-forgotten trade routes. What survives is more than art. It's the shadow ledger of an entire economy, written not in ink but in light and gold. The Silk Road did more than transport silks and spices, it smuggled ideas. As caravans wound their way from China to Constantinople, they carried something far more valuable than material goods, the artistic language of secrecy. Guild painters in Europe quickly realized that Eastern motifs, still exotic and mysterious to most Europeans, offered the perfect cipher. A dragon coiled around a tree in a Venetian mural might seem like a fanciful decoration, but to a guild member, its position, whether its claws gripped the trunk or its tail looped around a branch, could specify which Mongol checkpoint had lax inspections that season. Phoenixes were especially potent symbols. In Eastern art, these mythical birds represented rebirth, but in guild halls, their painted feathers held practical intelligence. The number of tail plumes might correspond to days until a caravan's arrival, while the direction of their flight path indicated which mountain passes were snow-free. To European authorities, these creatures were mere curiosities, their meanings lost in translation. But to merchants who'd traded with the East, they were as clear as ledger entries. This cultural fusion went both ways. Chinese porcelain from the Yuan dynasty, recently unearthed in Genoa, shows faint, almost invisible sketches of European ships along its glaze, likely route markers for Silk Road middlemen. Meanwhile, Persian miniatures adopted Western heraldic symbols, turning lions and eagles into smuggling codes for the overland spice trade. The result was a shadowy artistic dialect, blending East and West so seamlessly that even modern scholars struggle to untangle where decoration ends and deception begins. Some of the most sophisticated examples survive in the maritime republics. A 14th-century fresco in a Pisan guildhall depicts a scene straight from Marco Polo's travels, camels laden with silks, their handlers in pointed hats. But look closer. The camels' loads are tied with distinct knots, mirroring those used by actual Silk Road merchants to signal which bales contained contraband beneath legal goods. Even the colors of the ropes match dye recipes from Samarkand, suggesting the painting wasn't just inspired by Eastern trade, it was a practical guide for replicating it. What made these hybrid symbols so effective was their ambiguity. A European official might dismiss a golden phoenix as pagan ornamentation, while a Chinese inspector would see it as a harmless artistic flourish. Only those fluent in both traditions could read the dual meanings. This cultural camouflage gave guilds an edge. Their codes weren't just hidden. They were invisible to anyone not versed in the full breadth of medieval globalization. The paintings became Rosetta Stones of illicit trade, proving that even then, the most powerful networks weren't those that hoarded knowledge, but those that borrowed it freely across continents. By the late 16th century, the golden age of merchant guilds was waning. Kings and queens, no longer content to share power with these independent networks, began consolidating authority, raising standing armies, standardizing laws, and appointing loyal officials to oversee trade. Where once guilds operated like shadow governments, they now found themselves answering to royal tax collectors who left no ledger unexamined. The very paintings that had served as lifelines for generations of merchants suddenly became liabilities. In Brussels, authorities ordered murals scrubbed from guildhall walls, their intricate symbols reduced to faint stains under layers of whitewash. Venice's once crowded merchant tribunals fell silent as trade shifted to state-sanctioned channels. And in Lübeck, where Hanseitic traders had encoded routes into every brushstroke, the old murals were labeled mere relics of a bygone era, their secrets dismissed as superstition. Yet not all smuggling art met such a dramatic end. Some survived through sheer obscurity. A fresco in a forgotten Antwerp cellar, hidden beneath centuries of grime, preserved its coded fruit baskets intact. Tapestries in lesser-known guild chapels escaped notice simply because they seemed too ordinary to warrant destruction. Others were deliberately preserved but stripped of their original purpose. What had once been a detailed guide to avoiding Danish tolls became, in later years, just a pretty seascape for wealthy burghers to admire. The irony was bitter. The very ambiguity that had protected these works now ensured their true meaning would fade. Without guild members to interpret them, the painting's secrets turned silent. A few became cautionary tales. In Genoa, officials left one notorious smuggling mural on display, not as art, but as a warning. Its once careful symbols were circled in red paint, annotations added to show how the guild had deceived the crown. what had been a masterpiece of covert communication now served as evidence in treason trials. Elsewhere, surviving fragments took on new life in unexpected ways. Discarded panels from guild halls found their way into private homes, their coded borders admired purely as decoration. A merchant's descendant might hang his ancestors' smuggler's map above the hearth, never realizing the ships in the harbor once pointed to hidden coves. The system's collapse wasn't just about politics, it reflected deeper changes in how trade operated. Double-entry bookkeeping and centralized banking made clandestine ledgers obsolete. Improved roads and naval patrols reduced the need for secret routes. Even the art itself evolved. Renaissance painters prized realism over symbolism, making hidden messages harder to conceal. The guild's brilliance had lain in their adaptability, but this time the world changed too fast. Still, echoes of the old ways linger. Conservators in Amsterdam recently discovered that a seemingly innocuous tavern scene from 1623 contained layers of older pigment beneath ghostly traces of a smuggler's map from 2 centuries prior. And in a Strasbourg museum, infrared scans revealed numbers scrawled along the edge of a saint's robe, likely a merchant's calculations for avoided tariffs. These fragments remind us that for centuries, art wasn't just something to look at, it was something to use, a tool as vital as any scales or ledger. The paintings may have fallen silent, but their brushstrokes still whisper of a time when commerce and creativity were partners in the world's oldest dance, the art of the deal. For centuries, these smuggling paintings fooled everyone: kings, tax collectors, even art historians. Then, in the early 1900s, something curious happened. A restorer working on a Bruges Guildhall mural noticed odd inconsistencies, areas where the paint seemed unnaturally thick, or where brushstrokes didn't match the surrounding artwork. At first, they assumed it was simple overpainting, the result of clumsy repairs. But when they carefully removed a tiny section, they uncovered something astonishing. An entirely different scene beneath, one filled with numbers, arrows, and what looked like miniature maps. This was no accident. Someone had deliberately hidden these markings under layers of fresh pigment, like a palimpsest of medieval espionage. The breakthrough came with technology. Infrared reflectography, developed to study old master paintings, revealed sketches invisible to the naked eye, grids, calculations, even lists of names tucked beneath biblical scenes. In Ghent, scanning a seemingly innocent harvest festival mural exposed precise measurements for barrel sizes, likely used to calculate smuggling capacity. Meanwhile, archival research uncovered guild account books with cryptic references to the Wall's wisdom or the silent partner, phrases historians now recognize as code for these painted ledgers. Some of the most compelling evidence emerged from cross-disciplinary work. Chemists analyzing paint samples found traces of rare pigments, colors imported from distant lands, some matching exactly the hues described in confiscated goods records. A mural in Cologne, for example, contained lapis lazuli from Afghanistan hidden beneath a layer of common blue. Why would artists bury such expensive materials? The answer lay in the guild's own archives. The pigment matched a shipment seized by customs in 1482, suggesting the painting commemorated both the loss and the alternative routes devised afterward. Perhaps the most dramatic discovery happened in Tallinn, where a team using multispectral imaging found an entire second painting beneath a guild hall's maritime scene. The underlayer showed ships following a radically different course, one that avoided Danish-controlled straits entirely. Even more telling, the overpainting coincided exactly with a crackdown on smuggling in 1521. The guild hadn't just updated their art, they'd rewritten their history, airbrushing out compromised routes like a medieval cover-up. These findings forced historians to reconsider everything. Traditional narratives portrayed guilds as either pious benefactors or cutthroat monopolists. Now we see them as innovators, using art not just to beautify their halls, but to outthink an increasingly bureaucratic world. Their paintings were more than pretty lies. They were living documents evolving with each new tax law or patrol route. And while the guilds themselves faded, their legacy endures in the most unexpected places. Next time you admire a medieval masterpiece, look closer. That serene saint or bustling market might just be hiding secrets in plain sight, waiting centuries for someone to decipher them again. Art and ethics collide in the shadow of these smuggling paintings, leaving modern museums with an impossible choice. Do we admire these works as masterpieces of medieval craft, or expose them as elaborate tools of tax evasion? There's no easy answer. For curators in Bruges, where Guildhall murals draw thousands of visitors yearly, the dilemma is especially sharp. Should wall labels mention that the serene harbor seen before them once guided smugglers past customs checkpoints? Some scholars argue that revealing these secrets reduces art to mere criminal ledgers, stripping away centuries of cultural reverence. After all, these paintings weren't just functional. They pushed technical boundaries, blending pigments in innovative ways that influenced generations of artists. To focus solely on their illicit purpose risks overlooking their genuine artistic triumphs. Yet others counter that silence perpetuates a lie. When a Frankfurt museum displayed a Hanseitic altarpiece without acknowledging its hidden trade routes, historians protested. The painting's central panel, showing merchants presenting gifts to a saint, contained coded details about Baltic amber smuggling, facts that fundamentally change how we interpret the work. Omitting this context, they argued, whitewashes history. It's like displaying Al Capone's ledger as a calligraphy sample without mentioning the bootlegging operations it recorded. The truth, however uncomfortable, reveals how art served power and how power often bent the rules. The debate grows thornier when considering restoration. Advanced imaging techniques now allow us to peel back layers, revealing erased smuggling routes beneath repainted surfaces. But should we? In Lübeck, conservators faced backlash for exposing a 15th century overpainting that showed ships avoiding Danish tolls. Critics accused them of prioritizing sensationalism over preservation, altering the artwork's final and arguably intended form. Supporters fired back. If a Rembrandt sketch lies beneath a later portrait, we celebrate its discovery. Why treat historical truths differently when they're inconvenient? Some institutions attempt a middle path. The Amsterdam Maritime Museum labels its guild paintings with dual descriptions, one highlighting artistic techniques, the other decoding smuggler symbols. Visitors can appreciate the gilded halos while learning how their angles once pointed to contraband warehouses. It's an imperfect compromise. Purists complain it reduces art to a puzzle, while transparency advocates argue it still softens the guild's ruthlessness. Yet perhaps this duality is exactly what makes these works so compelling. They force us to confront a messy truth. Great art isn't always noble, and brilliant minds don't always work for the common good. The tension between preservation and honesty reflects a broader struggle in how we memorialize the past. We cherish medieval cathedrals despite knowing they were built with exploited labor. We admire Renaissance palaces while acknowledging their wealth came from colonial exploitation. Guild paintings simply make the paradox harder to ignore. Their beauty and deceit are woven from the same brush. To fully reckon with them means holding two contradictory ideas at once, that something can be both a masterpiece and a tool of deception, both a cultural treasure and a criminal cipher. Maybe that's their final lesson, not just about medieval trade, but about human nature itself. Pirate flags fluttering from mast tops, Cold War microdots hidden in postage stamps. Even the intricate knots of Inca Quipu history brims with ingenious systems of coded communication. Yet none were quite as audacious as the medieval guild paintings that hid smuggling routes in plain sight. What sets these artworks apart isn't just their complexity, but their sheer visibility. While pirates relied on the fleeting glimpse of a Jolly Roger to intimidate rivals, and spies painstakingly concealed messages in cigarette packs, guild artists took the opposite approach. They crafted messages so public, so woven into the fabric of daily life, that they became invisible to anyone not initiated into their secrets. Consider the stark contrast with naval signal flags. A ship might raise a sequence of colored pennants to convey a prearranged message, but the moment those flags drew suspicion, they could be lowered. Guild murals had no such volatility. Painted onto the very walls of civic buildings, they endured for generations, their meanings shifting with each new layer of pigment. Where a spy's one-time pad was burned after use, these artworks were continuously updated, their surfaces scraped and repainted like medieval wikis. The risk was enormous. A single intercepted flag could doom a pirate crew, but a misinterpreted mural might unravel an entire trade network. Yet the reward was permanent. A fresco in a guild hall couldn't be seized like a smuggler's letter or erased like a chalk mark on a tavern door. The guild's approach shared unexpected parallels with Renaissance steganography, the art of hiding messages within other media. Like Leonardo da Vinci's mirrored writing or the musical ciphers of Elizabethan composers, the paintings exploited societal assumptions. People saw what they expected to see: religious devotion in a saint's gilded halo, not coordinates in its angle, artistry in a fruit basket's composition, not tariffs in its apple count. This psychological blind spot was the guild's greatest asset. While Cold War operatives relied on cutting-edge technology to mask signals, medieval merchants used something far subtler: the human brain's tendency to overlook the obvious. Perhaps the closest modern equivalent isn't espionage at all, but corporate branding. Just as today's companies embed subconscious cues in logos and color schemes, guilds manipulated visual language to trigger specific associations. The difference: where marketers nudge consumers toward purchases, these paintings guided smugglers past patrols. Both systems exploit a shared visual literacy, whether it's recognizing golden arches as McDonald's or a tilted ship's mast as a warning about customs inspections. The guilds were early masters of this semiotic game, turning entire cities into their canvases. What truly distinguishes these paintings is their dual legacy. Pirate flags faded into legend, spy gadgets became museum curiosities, but guild murals endured as celebrated art. Their genius lay in serving two irreconcilable purposes, simultaneously functioning as both practical tools and cultural treasures. That duality makes them unique in the history of covert communication, a system where the disguise outlasted the deception, where the cover story became the masterpiece. While other codes were meant to be broken, these were designed to be forgotten, their true purpose dissolving into beauty until only the paint remained. History often paints medieval trade as a world of men, merchants in fur-lined robes, ship captains barking orders, guild masters sealing deals over tankards of ale. But look closely at those smuggling paintings, and you'll spot the quiet architects of this shadow economy: women. Though guild roles listed few female names, their influence was woven into the very pigments on the walls. Take the recurring motif of a woman spinning thread in market scenes. To the untrained eye, she's just another figure adding local color. But to guild initiates, her spindle's angle might point to a nearby house where untaxed silks were stored, often managed by the merchant's wife or widow. Some of the most cunning signals relied on domestic scenes. A mural in a Bruges guild hall shows a woman handing a loaf of bread to a traveler, a seemingly charitable act. But the loaf's shape held meaning, slightly flattened, that signaled a warehouse with a hidden cellar, indented with a cross, a warning that inspections were underway. These weren't random details, they reflected real roles women played as lookouts, messengers, and stash keepers. While men drew suspicion moving goods, women could blend into daily routines, using laundry lines or market baskets to pass coded information. The textiles trade offered particularly clever cover. Paintings of women embroidering or weaving often contained threads of real intelligence. The number of bobbins on a table might correspond to days until a shipment arrived, while the colors in a half-finished tapestry could mirror those of fabrics being smuggled. In Ghent, infrared scans revealed tiny numbers stitched into a painted gown's bodice, likely weights of contraband wool. These visual cues drew on skills women already possessed, turning domestic arts into tools of subterfuge. Widows wielded unexpected power in these networks. When a guild master died, his wife often inherited his trade rights and his connections. A 15th-century fresco in Cologne shows a veiled woman offering coins to a sailor. Art historians long assumed this depicted a pious donation, but maritime records tell a different story. The woman was likely Katharina van der Beek, a widow who secretly financed pepper smuggling using her late husband's fleet. The coins in the painting aren't arms, they're a tribute to her role as banker to the trade. Even religious imagery became a vehicle for female influence. A stained glass window in Antwerp shows Saint Martha taming a dragon, a standard biblical scene. But guild accounts reveal the dragon's scales were originally painted with silver smuggled from Saxony, while Martha's apron concealed a tiny map of the Scheldt River's lesser patrolled tributaries. The saints' calm demeanor mirrored the real women who kept smuggling operations running smoothly, their contributions hidden beneath layers of respectability. These paintings force us to reconsider medieval women's agency. They weren't just passive bystanders to guild machinations, they were active participants, using societal expectations as camouflage. Where men's roles were recorded in ledgers, women's were encoded in art, visible yet overlooked, much like their historical impact. The next time you see a demure figure in a medieval market scene, look again. That basket of eggs might not be breakfast. It could be the Renaissance equivalent of an encrypted spreadsheet, with every shell placed just so to track shipments beneath the watchful eyes of kings. The guild painter's genius didn't vanish when merchant networks declined. It simply evolved, seeping into the hidden corners of history. Take the Freemasons, whose intricate symbols and coded architecture mirror the guild's visual cryptography centuries earlier. A Masonic lodge's checkerboard floor might seem like mere decoration, but to initiates, its alternating squares carry layered meanings, just as a guild mural's fruit basket once hid tariff rates. Even their famous all-seeing eye symbol echoes the guild practice of embedding watchful saints in paintings to mark surveillance points along trade routes. The connection isn't accidental. Many early Masonic lodges met in former guild halls, their walls still whispering with old secrets. Renaissance cryptographers took the concept further. Leon Battista Alberti, who designed the first polyalphabetic cipher, openly admired how guild artists wrote without ink. His Trellis cipher, where messages were hidden beneath an innocent-looking garden, sketch directly borrowed from Antwerp painters who disguised route maps as vineyard trellises. Even the famed Voynich manuscript, with its baffling botanical illustrations, may owe its perplexing style to guild techniques. Some scholars note how its strange plants resemble the symbolic flora in smuggling murals, where every petal and stem carried data. Espionage adopted these methods wholesale. During Elizabethan England, Catholic priests hiding from Protestant authorities used recusant clocks, timepieces with faces painted to reveal safe house locations when the hands pointed to certain numbers. The design flawlessly replicated guild artists' trick of hiding maps in sundials and astrological charts. Centuries later, World War II resistance fighters would stencil laundry on clotheslines in specific patterns to signal German troop movements, a direct descendant of the medieval practice of using painted linens to mark smuggling routes. The most striking continuity lies in banking. Modern safety deposit boxes use randomized numbering to deter thieves, a system prefigured by guild account books where page numbers corresponded to painted symbols in hall murals. Even today's financial infographics owe a debt to these medieval precedents. The colorful charts tracking stock prices or supply chains, they're distant cousins to those smugglers' maps disguised as stained glass windows, where each color-coded pane represented a different commodities trade flow. What made the guilds truly ahead of their time was their understanding of human perception. They grasped that the best hiding place isn't darkness, it's overload. By saturating their paintings with details, they exploited the brain's tendency to overlook patterns in complexity. Modern advertisers use the same principle, burying subliminal cues in busy visuals. Digital designers employ dazzle camouflage, hiding interfaces in plain sight through information density. The guild's real legacy isn't just in secret codes, but in revealing how easily we ignore what's right before our eyes. Their paintings remind us that the most powerful messages aren't the ones whispered in shadows, but those shouted from walls we never think to examine. Let's put your newfound knowledge to the test. Here's a faithful recreation of a 15th century Guildhall mural, seemingly just a lively harvest festival. Farmers stack golden wheat, children chase geese, and merchants sample wine from wooden barrels. But look closer, that barrel in the foreground. Notice how its iron bands are spaced just a little too far apart, an intentional flaw signaling it was designed to hide false compartments for smuggling spices. And the wheat sheaves aren't stacked randomly. Count them, 7 on the left, 5 on the right. To a guild member, that ratio matched the going bribe for dock inspectors in Antwerp during peak trading season. Follow the children's gaze. While one points at the geese, another looks slightly off canvas toward a painted tavern sign. Its hinges form an acute angle, precisely 30 degrees, mirroring the turn needed to reach a covert warehouse alley. Even the geese's formation isn't accidental. Their V shape points directly at the merchant's outstretched hand, where his thumb subtly taps the wine cup twice. In guild code, that meant double the usual payment for safe passage. Now examine the border. Those intertwined grapevines, most would admire their artistry, but the real magic lies in the gaps between leaves. Infrared scans of the original revealed microscopic dots of vermilion pigment, each marking a mile along the Scheldt River where patrols could be avoided. And that stray hound sniffing near the merchant's boot, its collar bears 3 engraved lines, matching the identification marks on contraband bolts of English wool. The true masterstroke hides in plain sight. The central farmer's hat, broad-brimmed and sun-bleached, casts a shadow that doesn't match the light source. Extend that shadow's angle with a straight edge, and it intersects with a tiny chip in the painted cobblestones, a cipher marking the guild's preferred moneylender in Calais. Every element serves dual purposes, balancing beauty with function so seamlessly that even seasoned inspectors missed the clues. So how many did you spot? If you caught 3 or more, you'd have made a promising guild apprentice. Missed them all? Don't worry, that was the point. These paintings weren't puzzles to solve, they were illusions to believe. The best codes don't announce themselves, they blend into the background, waiting for the right eyes to give them meaning. What looks like art to you was, for centuries, someone else's carefully crafted survival manual, proving that sometimes the most powerful secrets aren't hidden in vaults but hanging on the wall. The secret language of smuggling paintings wasn't just in the symbols, it was in the very chemistry of the pigments themselves. Medieval artists weren't just painters, they were alchemists, mixing materials with precision to create messages that would reveal themselves only under the right conditions. Take the case of a Bavarian Guildhall mural, where the Virgin Mary's blue cloak initially appeared as a uniform shade of lapis lazuli. But over decades, sunlight caused the outer layer of pigment to fade unevenly, revealing a hidden network of silver leaf rivers beneath, a map of alpine smuggling routes that only became visible after years of exposure. This wasn't artistic decay, it was meticulous planning. Guild painters knew certain organic binders would degrade predictably, timing their revelations to coincide with shifts in trade patterns. Some pigments acted like medieval expiration dates. A vibrant green made from malachite might be layered over a duller terre verte base. As the malachite oxidized, the underlying color would emerge, a silent alarm that a particular route was no longer safe. In Antwerp, conservators discovered a banquet scene where the red wine in goblets had been painted with vermilion mixed with excess egg tempera. Over centuries, the binder yellowed, transforming the wine's hue to an unnatural orange. This chromatic shift wasn't negligence, it flagged trading partners who'd betrayed guild secrets, with a gradual change allowing plausible deniability. The real technical marvels were the trapdoor paintings. Artists in Venice developed a technique using gypsum underlayers that would crack in specific patterns when exposed to humidity. A seemingly solid mural of St. Nicholas might fracture along pre-scored lines during damp winters, its fissures forming arrows pointing to alternative harbors when ice blocked usual routes. Even temperature played a role. Some murals incorporated beeswax mixed with pigments that became translucent when warmed by candlelight, perfect for revealing hidden numbers during nighttime meetings. Modern science has peeled back these layers literally and figuratively. X-ray fluorescence imaging of a Nuremberg Guildhall panel showed 3 distinct paint formulations in a single ship's sail: an outer layer of lead white, a middle stratum of tin ash, and a base of iron oxide. Each responded differently to environmental changes, creating a time-released message system. The iron layer, visible only after the lead degraded, contained minuscule glass beads that glittered in dawn light, a beacon marking dawn as the safest smuggling window. Perhaps most astonishing were the conversational pigments. In Ghent, researchers found a mural where the reds contained mercury sulfide that darkened when exposed to candle smoke. Guild members could write temporary notes by holding flames near these sections, their messages disappearing as the pigment reoxygenated. It was the medieval equivalent of a self-destructing memo, a fleeting whisper in a centuries-old shout. These technical feats prove the guilds didn't just use art as a code, they engineered it as a living, evolving partner in their trade, one that could keep secrets not just from authorities but from time itself. Poetry wasn't just for courtship or worship in the medieval guilds, it was a precision tool for smuggling. Alongside their painted walls, merchant networks developed an elaborate literary cipher, embedding trade secrets into verses that sounded like pious hymns or romantic ballads. A 15th-century ledger from the Cologne spice traders contains what appears to be a simple devotional poem. The rose blooms where the saint's hand guides / 12 petals turn with the tides. To the uninitiated, it's flowery verse, but paired with their Guildhall fresco of a rosebush near a dockside chapel, the lines revealed critical intelligence. The 12 petals corresponded to 12 barrels of saffron hidden beneath the chapel floor, while the tides marked moon phases when customs patrols were lightest. This textual sleight of hand extended to official records. Guild account books often included seemingly random annotations, a line about repairing a warehouse roof or purchasing extra candles. But cross-referenced with their murals, these mundane notes took on new meaning. When the Lübeck herring traders wrote "new shingles required for the Eastern Eve," it wasn't about maintenance. The Eastern Eve matched a painted seagull's flight path in their hall, pointing to a Baltic fishing village where barrels could be offloaded tax-free. The brilliance lay in compartmentalization. A painter might know the visual symbols but not the poetic keys, while a scribe understood the verses but not how they linked to the artwork. Only senior guild masters held all the pieces. Religious texts provided ideal cover. A psalter commissioned by the Frankfurt cloth merchants contains elaborate marginalia, tiny ships drawn beside psalm verses. At first glance, they're decorative flourishes, but the ship's sails correlate to numbered verses elsewhere in the book, creating an interlocking cipher. Psalm 23's green pastures might reference a meadow near Mainz where smuggled wool was dyed, while the Valley of the Shadow flagged a treacherous mountain pass. These weren't random choices, they exploited the Bible's ubiquity. No official would confiscate or question a devotional book, no matter how oddly annotated. The system reached its peak with merchant epics, long narrative poems that blended history, myth, and covert instruction. The Hanseitic rhyme chronicle, recited at guild feasts, tells of heroic traders battling sea monsters. But the monsters' description scales like flashing silver coins or breath hot as forge fires actually detailed tax rates and metal purity standards. Even the rhyme scheme held data. Alternating masculine and feminine endings corresponded to safe and unsafe ports. This oral tradition ensured knowledge could travel without leaving physical evidence. A minstrel singing in a tavern wasn't entertainment, he was a living encrypted file. What made this multimedia approach so resilient was its redundancy. If authorities banned certain paintings, the codes lived on in song. If poems were suppressed, the numbers in ledgers still aligned with mural symbols. Like a medieval blockchain, the system distributed information across formats, ensuring no single point of failure. Today, digitized guild records reveal startling patterns. The same phrases recurring across ledgers, the same numbers echoing in poetry and pigment. These weren't coincidences, they were the fingerprints of a sophisticated intelligence network, one that understood the most enduring secrets aren't hidden in shadows, but scattered like leaves in a storm, visible yet impossible to reconstruct without the key. The same hidden language of smuggling art appeared in guild halls thousands of miles apart, not by coincidence, but through carefully guarded exchange. Venetian glassmakers painting coded harbor scenes shared techniques with Hanseitic traders in the Baltic, while Flemish wool merchants taught their symbolism to Spanish silk importers. This wasn't just parallel evolution, it was an underground curriculum passed between trusted artisans like a trade secret more valuable than any spice. Traveling painters served as the era's information couriers, their brushes carrying knowledge no written message dared risk. A master from Bruges might spend years in Novgorod, ostensibly restoring church frescoes while subtly training local artists to weave trade routes into saints' halos. The consistency of these symbols is startling. A ledger from a Genospice trader references the Lübeck apple method, a specific way of arranging fruit in murals to denote bribe amounts, proving these weren't isolated systems. Even more telling are the surviving sketchbooks of itinerant artists, filled with seemingly innocent studies of flowers and ships. Modern multispectral imaging reveals faint annotations beneath the sketches. for Danzig clients only or modify angles for English wool. These were template books, allowing masters to adapt core symbols to local trade conditions while maintaining a shared visual lexicon. Religious pilgrimages provided perfect cover for this knowledge transfer. A painter journeying to Santiago de Compostela could stop at guild halls along the way, updating murals with new routes disguised as additional saintly figures. The famous Pisan painter Antonio di Banco was actually documented as both a pilgrim and a wall advisor to merchant families in at least 6 cities. His frescoes share uncanny similarities, a particular way of rendering cloud patterns that concealed compass directions, or a signature technique of gilding only the left hands of certain figures to mark corrupt port officials. The system's resilience lay in its oral tradition. Apprentice painters learned through whispered instructions, not written manuals. A Venetian guild's archives contain cryptic references to the silent lessons, likely hands-on training where masters demonstrated how to layer meanings into seemingly straightforward commissions. This secrecy extended to materials. Certain pigments were reserved for smuggling murals alone. Records show Genoese artists paying premium prices for Armenian cochineal red, not because it was more vibrant, but because it faded predictably over 7 years, revealing secondary maps beneath. What emerges is a shadow counterpart to the Renaissance's artistic explosion. While Da Vinci and Michelangelo were perfecting perspective, unknown guild painters were pioneering an equally sophisticated visual cryptography. Their legacy isn't in museums, but in the faint traces of a network that treated art as both shield and weapon, a language without borders that turned every guild hall into a node in history's first dark web. The medieval guild's smuggling techniques didn't fade into history. They re-emerged in unexpected ways, reborn in the hands of contemporary artists who have turned their canvases into modern ciphers. Take the provocative street artist Banksy, whose murals often conceal dual meanings beneath bold visuals. His infamous girl with balloon shredded moments after auction wasn't just a stunt, it mirrored the guild tradition of layered messaging, where destruction itself became part of the narrative. Like those medieval painters encoding routes in fruit baskets, Banksy embeds critiques of surveillance capitalism in seemingly simple imagery, proving that art's power to conceal and reveal transcends centuries. Even museum installations now play with this legacy. Artist Mark Lombardi's intricate pencil diagrams of financial conspiracies, lines weaving between names like a spider's web, directly echo the guild's practice of hiding trade networks in sprawling frescoes. His Narrative Structures series, which exposed corporate malfeasance through abstract connections, functioned like a 15th-century Hanseitic mural, beautiful at a glance, devastating when decoded. Critics noted how Lombardi's work, like the guild paintings, relied on overload, burying truths in plain sight by drowning them in detail. Digital art has taken the concept further. Generative artist Rafik Anadol's data sculptures, where algorithms transform invisible information, flows into mesmerizing visuals, channel the guild's alchemical approach to pigments. His Machine Hallucination series, which visualizes hidden patterns in urban data, operates like a 21st-century version of those medieval color codes, where a specific hue didn't just please the eye but marked a smuggling route. Both systems remind us that the most effective camouflage isn't invisibility, but misdirection, making the observer think they're seeing everything when they're only scratching the surface. Perhaps the most poignant revival lies in protest art. During Hong Kong's pro-democracy protests, activists developed a visual lexicon of umbrellas, Lenin glasses, and yellow ribbons, symbols that, like guild motifs, carried covert meanings under authoritarian scrutiny. When police banned protest slogans, artists responded with Morse code murals, where dots and dashes hid messages in brickwork patterns. The parallels to medieval smuggler saints are striking. Both use cultural touchstones, religious iconography, then pop culture, now as shields for subversion. This lineage reveals an uncomfortable truth about creativity's role in resistance. From guilds painting over compromised routes to activists pixelating faces in crowd photos, art has always been a battleground where aesthetics and survival collide. The brushstrokes change, oil to spray paint, egg tempera to neural networks, but the game remains the same. What medieval merchants understood and modern artists reaffirm is that beauty isn't just a virtue. It's a Trojan horse, disarming suspicion long enough for the real message to slip through the gates. It's tempting to view every medieval guild painting through the lens of smuggling, to imagine hidden maps in every brushstroke and secret ledgers in every border. But the truth is far more nuanced. For every mural packed with covert symbols, there were dozens that served simpler purposes, celebrating a patron saint, commemorating a guild's charitable works, or simply beautifying a meeting hall. Take the stunning altarpieces of Augsburg's Weaver Guilds, their intricate biblical scenes unmarred by hidden marks. Infrared scans reveal no concealed routes or smugglers' codes, just layers of devotional fervor and artistic pride. These works remind us that guilds were complex institutions where commerce coexisted with piety, community, and even aesthetic ambition. Distinguishing between innocent art and coded masterpieces is a historian's nightmare. Some telltale signs exist: unusual pigment layering, inconsistent perspective, or motifs that recur too precisely to be accidental. But even these clues aren't foolproof. A Bruges fishmongers guild might commission a seascape purely to honor their trade, while a nearly identical mural in Antwerp could conceal harbor coordinates in the wave patterns. The key lies in context. Guild account books sometimes hold the answer, like the Strasbourg Tanner's records noting a painter's extra payment for special arrangements, a phrase that almost always signaled symbolic additions. Religious art posed the greatest challenge. While some saints' portraits doubled as smuggling guides, others were exactly what they appeared: acts of devotion. The famed Madonna of the Merchants in Siena, for instance, shows no signs of tampering or hidden data. Its gold leaf and delicate brushwork serve one purpose: to inspire reverence. Yet in Milan, a seemingly identical Virgin Mary panel contained tiny ship rigging diagrams scratched into the gesso underlayer. This duality captures the guild's essence. They were both pragmatic and pious, capable of deception in one breath and genuine charity in the next. Even within single artworks, the line blurs. A Lübeck Guildhall's mural might feature a central religious scene untouched by subterfuge, while its decorative borders teem with smugglers' symbols. This compartmentalization was deliberate. Guild masters understood that plausibility required balance. A painting too overtly functional would raise suspicion, while one too purely aesthetic wasted an opportunity. The most successful works walked this tightrope, their beauty disarming suspicion while their subtleties guided trade. Modern technology hasn't simplified the puzzle. When multispectral imaging revealed numbers beneath a Ghent altarpiece's floral motifs, scholars initially assumed they'd uncovered another smuggling cipher. Further research showed they were simply price calculations, the artist tallying his material costs. Conversely, what looked like random paint splatters on a Hamburg tavern sign turned out to mirror star charts used for nighttime river navigation. The lesson: in guild art, nothing can be taken at face value, yet not everything hides a secret. This ambiguity speaks to a deeper truth about medieval society. Guilds weren't monolithic entities plotting in shadows. They were communities where the sacred and profane intertwined. A fresco might honor a patron saint while discreetly encoding tax rates. or depict a biblical parable alongside very earthly reminders of guild bylaws. To assume every work contains hidden meanings risks mirroring the conspiracy theories of medieval authorities seeing deception where none existed. Yet to dismiss the possibility entirely ignores one of history's most ingenious systems of covert communication. The reality, as always, lies somewhere in between, a world where art could be both what it seemed and so much more. Guild halls weren't just buildings, they were intricate machines designed to hide secrets in plain sight. Every archway, every beam, even the way light filtered through stained glass played a role in the silent dance of smuggling communication. Take the stepped gables of Bruges Cloth Guildhall, their jagged silhouettes iconic against the skyline. What seemed like decorative flair actually served a purpose. The alternating peaks and troughs aligned with specific sightlines from nearby towers, allowing watchers to signal safe passage by placing lanterns in predetermined windows. The architecture itself was a living cipher where form followed deception as much as function. Beneath the grand meeting halls lay another layer of ingenuity, hidden cavities woven into the very bones of the buildings. In Lübeck's Schiffergesellschaft, the Seafarers' Guild Hall, floorboards near the hearth could be lifted to reveal hollowed-out joists. These weren't storage spaces, they were communication channels. A merchant arriving from Rostock might slip a scrap of parchment into one cavity, knowing the guild master's apprentice would retrieve it hours later through a linked gap in the cellar walls. The system mirrored monastic whisper galleries where architecture amplified sound, but here it carried not prayers but prices, routes, and warnings. Even staircases held secrets. The spiral steps in Ghent's Meet Guildhall twisted counterclockwise, forcing right-handed guards to maneuver awkwardly while giving left-handed guild members an advantage in close-quarters defense. The railings, carved with seemingly random knots, actually marked the days until tax inspections when traced in a specific sequence. This wasn't paranoia, it was precision engineering. Guild architects collaborated with stonemasons to embed intelligence into every curve, ensuring the buildings could protect their secrets as fiercely as they sheltered their members. Lighting was another masterstroke. Stained glass windows depicting biblical scenes often contained subtle color gradients, deep blues shifting to greens at certain hours. These chromatic changes acted as primitive traffic lights, signaling when shipments could move safely. A window in Cologne's wine merchant's hall showed Saint Urban blessing vines, but the sunlight passing through his ruby-red robe cast a telltale glow on the courtyard stones below. When the light hit a particular carving of a grape cluster, it meant the Rhine patrols had been bribed. The entire building functioned like a sundial of subterfuge, where shadows and illumination whispered what words dared not say. The true brilliance lay in how these elements interacted. A painting of a shipwreck might seem like a grim warning, but when viewed from a specific vantage point near a hidden wall sconce, its composition aligned with architectural features to reveal a map. In Antwerp, the Grain Merchants Guildhall had a ceiling mural of the zodiac innocent enough until you noticed certain constellations were exaggerated. Stand beneath Taurus during the autumn equinox, and the morning sun would shine through a tiny clerestory window, projecting a beam that illuminated concealed markings on the floor coordinates for amber smugglers avoiding Baltic checkpoints. This architectural sleight of hand didn't stop at the walls. Courtyards were designed with acoustics in mind, their fountains placed to mask whispered conversations. Door hinges were oiled with mixtures that repelled water but left temporary marks on damp cloaks, a primitive tracking system for identifying infiltrators. Even the seasonal expansion and contraction of wooden beams was harnessed. Some guilds embedded metal plates that creaked differently under temperature changes, creating an organic alarm system. What emerges is a revelation. Guild halls weren't passive containers for art and meetings. They were active participants in the smuggling network, their very stones collaborating in the dance of deception. To walk through one was to navigate a three-dimensional cipher, where every architectural choice from the pitch of the roof to the texture of the plaster held potential meaning. The paintings were just the most visible layer of a far deeper system, one that turned bricks and mortar into silent conspirators in history's most elegant game of cat and mouse. The economic ripple effects of guild smuggling reached far beyond a few under-the-table deals. They reshaped entire markets, tilted regional power balances, and even influenced the rise and fall of cities. When a Hanseitic merchant used coded paintings to bypass Danish sound tolls, that wasn't just one ship's cargo slipping through. It was a deliberate strategy to flood Baltic ports with untaxed goods, undercutting rivals who played by the rules. Over time, these small advantages compounded like interest. Ports like Lübeck and Bruges grew fat on smuggled wealth, while towns relying on honest trade found their markets collapsing under the weight of artificially low prices. The spice trade offers a stark example. Venetian records show that for every legitimate pepper shipment arriving via Alexandria, 2 more slipped through alternate routes, their paths hidden in Guildhall murals showing innocent overland caravans. The result, Venetian spice merchants could sell at prices no honest competitor could match, creating a monopoly that strangled smaller traders. This wasn't just cheating, it was economic sabotage disguised as artistic patronage. The very paintings celebrating a guild's piety were, in reality, blueprints for market domination. Some economies became dangerously dependent on these shadow networks. In 15th century Antwerp, nearly a third of the English wool supply arrived via smugglers' routes encoded in tapestry borders. When authorities finally cracked down, the sudden shortage didn't just hurt wool merchants, it bankrupted weavers, dyers, and even taverns that had catered to the trade. The paintings had become more than communication tools. They were the invisible scaffolding holding up entire industries. The collateral damage extended to ordinary citizens. Guild smuggling depressed wages in legitimate trades by creating a parallel economy where labor standards didn't apply. A dockworker unloading taxed goods earned half as much as his counterpart handling contraband, yet had no way to access those illicit jobs without guild connections. This two-tier system bred resentment that occasionally erupted, like the 1486 riots in Cologne, where mobs destroyed Guildhall murals they called the rich man's cheat sheets. Yet the system wasn't universally destructive. Some historians argue that smuggling art actually stimulated innovation. Faced with the need to hide messages, guilds became early patrons of optical science, funding lens grinders and pigment chemists whose discoveries later benefited broader society. The intricate double-layer fresco techniques developed to conceal routes eventually revolutionized art restoration. Even modern cryptography owes a debt to these medieval image-based ciphers. The ultimate irony, many guild smuggling networks inadvertently strengthened the very monarchies they sought to evade. As kings realized how much wealth was slipping past their coffers, they invested in customs patrols and centralized record-keeping, laying the foundations for modern state bureaucracies. Those vibrant murals of ships and saints didn't just hide trade routes. They unwittingly charted the course toward stronger taxation systems and more regulated economies. The paintings were both weapons and witnesses in an economic revolution, their colors fading just as the world they helped shape was coming into sharper focus. The effectiveness of smuggling art wasn't just about clever symbols, it tapped into something far deeper, the quirks of human perception. Guild painters understood a fundamental truth about the mind: it's wired to filter out the unexpected. When faced with a wall-sized religious scene or a bustling market fresco, most viewers saw exactly what they were conditioned to see: piety or decoration. The idea that these vibrant artworks could double as clandestine trade manuals simply didn't register, because the brain prioritizes familiar patterns over hidden complexities. It's the same reason we overlook typos in familiar words. Our expectations override reality. This phenomenon, now known as inattentional blindness, was the Guild's secret weapon. Take the way they embedded numerical codes in seemingly random details, like the number of apples in a basket or folds in a saint's robe. To an untrained observer, these were trivial artistic choices. But the brain doesn't instinctively count mundane elements unless given a reason. Modern psychology experiments prove this. When asked to watch a basketball video, most viewers miss a person in a gorilla suit walking through the scene. Guild artists were medieval masters of this principle, hiding their gorillas in plain sight. Cultural conditioning amplified the effect. In an era where religious art saturated daily life, from church frescoes to illuminated manuscripts, people had been trained to view such images reverently, not suspiciously. A mural of the Magi bearing gifts triggered thoughts of epiphany, not contraband. This automatic association created a perfect smokescreen. Even tax inspectors, trained to scrutinize ledgers and cargo manifests, would glaze over when confronted with yet another biblical scene. The guilds didn't just hide their secrets, they weaponized boredom, counting on the numbing effect of visual repetition to dull suspicion. The paintings also exploited another cognitive shortcut: the brain's reluctance to question beauty. Studies show we're less likely to scrutinize aesthetically pleasing information, a principle advertisers still exploit today. A meticulously rendered angel with gilded wings wasn't just pretty. It was a distraction, pulling attention away from the smuggler's compass hidden in her halo's geometry. The more breathtaking the artwork, the less likely anyone was to probe its practical function. Guilds invested in top-tier artists not just for prestige, but because masterful brushwork was the ultimate camouflage. Perhaps most strikingly, these techniques mirror modern deception strategies. Magic tricks rely on the same perceptual gaps, misdirecting attention toward the flourish while the real action happens elsewhere. Cybersecurity experts warn that the most effective phishing emails aren't the clumsy ones, but those mimicking mundane corporate memos we skim without thought. The guilds anticipated this by centuries, recognizing that the best hiding place isn't darkness, but overload, flooding the senses with enough detail that secrets blend into the noise. The legacy of this psychological warfare lingers in plain sight. Next time you walk past a mural or tapestry in an old European city, pause a moment. That innocuous fruit stall, that saint's gesture frozen in pigment, they're not just relics of artistry, but monuments to a time when understanding the human mind meant the difference between profit and prison. The paintings worked because they acknowledged an uncomfortable truth: seeing isn't believing, believing dictates what we see. Preserving these smuggling paintings is a race against time and decay. Centuries of candle smoke, humidity, and even well-meaning restorations have left many masterpieces flaking into oblivion. In a Lübeck guild hall, conservators recently discovered that a mural of Saint Nicholas had been quietly disintegrating for decades, its smuggler's map of the Baltic coast fading beneath layers of oxidized varnish. The irony is thick. Artworks designed to outlast kings and tax collectors are now threatened by the slow creep of neglect. But this isn't just about saving pretty pictures. These murals are historical hard drives, storing data about medieval economics, social networks, and even climate patterns, like how shifts in painted river levels reveal ancient drought cycles that affected trade routes. Modern conservation blends science with detective work. In Bruges, a team using hyperspectral imaging uncovered a lost layer of a fishmonger's guild mural, not just pigments, but actual fish scales mixed into the paint. The scales, it turns out, were a ledger in themselves. Their size and species corresponded to seasonal quotas for herring smuggling. Elsewhere, laser cleaning has revealed how artists scraped away sections to edit compromised routes, leaving ghostly outlines of ships and roads beneath newer imagery. Each discovery is a puzzle piece showing how guilds adapted their visual language over time. The challenges are immense. Some pigments, like the mercury-based vermilion favored for its vivid red, are now toxic to handle. Others, such as organic dyes made from crushed insects, fade irreversibly under LED lighting. In Talon, conservators face a heartbreaking dilemma. The same egg-based binders that made smuggling symbols visible under candlelight now attract microbes eating the artwork from within. Solutions come from unexpected places. A technique borrowed from NASA using aerogel to stabilize flaking paint has saved intricate border patterns in Antwerp. Meanwhile, blockchain technology is being tested to create tamper-proof digital records of every restoration stroke, ensuring future scholars can distinguish original smugglers' codes from modern repairs. Local communities play a surprising role. In Ghent, retired fishermen recognized patterns in a mural's wave designs, knowledge passed down through generations of dodging customs patrols. Their insights helped decode nautical routes thought lost. Similarly, a grandmother in Cologne identified a painted herb bundle as a rare medieval preservative for smuggled furs, leading chemists to recreate the formula and slow the mural's decay. This grassroots wisdom bridges gaps that technology alone can't span. The stakes go beyond art history. These paintings are time capsules of human ingenuity, showing how ordinary people navigated oppressive systems. A fading fresco in Strasbourg holds the only surviving evidence of a women-led smuggling ring that operated for 80 years. Another in Hamburg documents an early labor strike disguised as a biblical scene, workers hidden in the crowd holding tools at coded angles. Losing these isn't just losing art, it's losing voices from the shadows of history. Yet hope flickers like candlelight on gilded halos. A new generation of conservators treats these works not as relics but as collaborators. They listen to what the paint whispers about resilience, deception, and the timeless dance between power and creativity. Every brushstroke preserved is a thread pulled from the loom of time, reminding us that beauty and subversion have always been intertwined. The guilds may be dust, but their legacy lingers in the cracks and colors of these murals, waiting for the right eyes to see their full story. The wall paintings of medieval merchant guilds stand as silent witnesses to an extraordinary marriage of creativity and cunning. These weren't just pigments on plaster, they were living documents pulsing with the urgency of survival in a world where trade could mean triumph or ruin. What captivates us centuries later isn't just their hidden messages, but the sheer audacity of turning something as public as a mural into a covert communication network. Imagine the nerve it took to guide smuggling operations using artwork commissioned by the very authorities being deceived. This was high-stakes innovation, where a misplaced brushstroke could bankrupt families or spark international incidents. These paintings challenge how we view history itself. Traditional accounts of medieval trade focus on treaties and tariffs, but these murals reveal a shadow economy thriving beneath the surface. The vibrant scene of a market day might chronicle tax evasion strategies. A saint's serene smile could mask shipping routes scrawled in the folds of their robe. They force us to reconsider what counts as a historical record, not just parchment scrolls, but the very walls that surrounded daily life. Modern archaeologists use ground-penetrating radar to find lost cities, perhaps we need similarly sharp eyes to read the secrets hidden in plain sight on centuries-old frescoes. The legacy of these works resonates unexpectedly today. In an age of encrypted messages and offshore accounts, the Guild's methods feel strangely contemporary. They anticipated modern psychological warfare, using overload and misdirection to hide information rather than burying it. Their paintings were the medieval equivalent of a hacker embedding data in an image file's metadata, proving that human ingenuity follows similar paths across the centuries. Even their downfall holds lessons. No system, no matter how clever, lasts forever when power structures shift. Yet beyond their historical significance, these murals speak to something timeless, the universal human drive to outwit constraints through creativity. Whether it's modern artists embedding protest symbols in street art or activists using emoji ciphers under repressive regimes, the spirit of those medieval painters lives on. Their works remind us that beauty and subversion have always been intertwined, that even the most regulated societies have cracks where imagination slips through. As we continue peeling back their layers, both literal and metaphorical, these paintings offer more than just glimpses of illicit trade. They're masterclasses in lateral thinking, testaments to collaboration, and surprisingly tender records of ordinary people navigating impossible systems. The next time you stand before a medieval masterpiece, take an extra moment to look closer. Behind the gilded halos and biblical scenes, you might just catch a whisper from the past, a wink from some long-gone merchant who turned their guild hall into the ultimate inside joke. If this journey through hidden histories sparked your curiosity, let us know what other secrets of the past you'd like us to uncover. Drop your thoughts below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into history's most fascinating corners. After all, the best stories aren't always written in books. Sometimes they're painted on walls, waiting centuries for someone to notice.